So welcome everyone. Thanks for coming to the seminar. As you noticed, we will record this, and if everything goes well, we will also upload it to YouTube. So this is Sharon from MelbUniMaths&Stats Society, which is known as MUMS. And this year we are teamed up with LunchMaths from Monash University. And we are planning to run the talk every second teaching week, alternating between speakers from Melbourne and Monash. This week, we're excited to have Jiesen Wang from Melbourne, who is a PhD candidate and also my favorite tutor from the School of Math and Stats department. She will be presenting to us about the strategic behavior in queuing system, where we will dabble in some problems in the framework of game theory and examples about queuing systems. During the talk, there will be some interactions, so feel free to unmute yourselves. There will be also time for questions at the end of the presentation, and this will not be recorded, so you can either unmute yourselves or leave your questions in the chat. So that's all the announcements. Let's welcome Jiesen Wang, and I'll stop sharing and hand over to her.
Thank you, Xuehan, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Jiesen, and I'm a PhD student in the math department in University of Melbourne. And yeah, today I will share with you some of my research topics during my PhD. It's actually, I myself think, very interesting, strategic behavior in queuing system. Okay, now I guess I'm about to share my iPad. Okay. I hope you can see that. Sorry.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay, great. So if you don't mind, I will turn off the video of myself during the talk because I will look at iPad. My face looks weird in the video, but I will turn the video on when we start the communication part. Okay. So. Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm a PhD student in the math department under the supervision of Peter Taylor and Mark Fackrell. I appreciate this opportunity to share my experience with you, my opinions on the relevant literature of strategic behavior in queuing systems. Hopefully, it will be attractive and inspiring to the young people. I expect interaction with audience during the presentation. Anytime you want to ask anything during the talk, just unmute yourself. I think it's more efficient than leave a leave in the chat, so leave a text in the chat. So just unmute yourself. And I always tell students in my tutorial that I like bounce ideas of others to make my thinking clear. Okay, let's start. A customer who needs a service of a facility always come across different kinds of decision-making problems. For example, he may decide to choose to queue or not to queue, or he may decide to leave and give up the service due to the impatience after staying for a while. He may decide when to arrive the system. He may decide whether to purchase a priority pass or not. Or he may need to decide to change to the shuttle queue. This we always call it jockey. Customers try to optimize their own payoff. However, this always depends on other people's decisions and also the social rule. Thus, the result is an aggregate equilibrium pattern. We always call it Nash equilibrium, which is named after its inventor, John Nash, an American mathematician. I think you are familiar with John Nash if you have watched the movie, A Beautiful Mind. So now let's look at the first example. An ice cream trolley. Okay. Look, these kids are queuing. Maybe I can use a pointer. These kids are queuing here. However, there's a person who have purchased the priority pass. So all the kids needs to wait to be served until this guy to be served first, because they don't have the priority pass. Actually, things can be more complicated if you consider it as the stochastic model. So besides this guy, there may be new arrival customers. If every arriving customer chooses to buy this priority pass, then the situation for the kids may get worse. Of course, everyone who joined later can be served earlier than them, since they choose to buy the priority pass. So the kids now, they will start thinking maybe they should buy the priority pass too. And another point we can observe here is the kid in here may have a higher incentive to buy the priority pass than the kid in the front. Means the worse situation you are at, the higher incentive you may want to buy this priority pass. Okay, we will revisit this example later. This is just some intuition chatting. Okay, we need. So look at this queue. You choose to join a queue before knowing everything. Maybe the information is not observable to you until you choose to join the queue. And then you say, oh man, why I always get stuck in the wrong line? You realize there is a gladiator addressed customer who takes a long time, and you realize your situation is getting worse and worse. And then you may think your expected remaining waiting time may exceed your buyer limit. You consider reneging. When I say reneging, I mean leave the system after you join. But at the same time, the guy here, okay, if you are this white jacket guy, you may think, I want to leave the queue. But at the same time, you realize that this situation is applicable to every customer in this queue. So it includes the customers in front of you. When you consider, imagine you are this white jacket guy, and when you're considering reneging the queue, the guy who stands in front of you also feel impatient, and he may also consider leaving the system because he arrived earlier than you. So he may get impatient earlier than you. So when you consider this, you see your decision not only depends on the current situation, also depends on other people's reaction. If this guy chooses to renege earlier than you, then your situation may not be that bad. So you may think, if he renege, I will stay. So this is another example, illustrates there is interaction between. This is another example to illustrate the interaction between customers' behavior. Okay. So based on what we have seen from the two examples, we can summarize the factors affecting decision making as follows. The decision making always depends on the parameters. This includes the cost, the reward, the expected waiting time, arrival rate, service rate. And it also depends on other people's decisions. This makes our result a Nash equilibrium pattern instead of an optimization problem. Also, it depends on the social planner. When I say social planner, I actually mean the social rule. For example, like what we just said, if they set this priority class, and then you will consider buying it. But this rule is setting by, the ice cream owner, for example. It's not, the social rule is set by the social planner. And of course, the priority class example is not only appear in the ice cream world. It's actually it's actually very common setting in industries like banks and also flight companies. Okay, so basically, what I want to say is the factors that affect the decision making roughly include the three categories. Belongs to the parameter, other people's decisions, and the social planner. And today, I will So the parameters is always in the assumption. We always assume the parameters in our model. But what we are interested at is the other people's decision, how the other people's decision affect our decision, and how the social planner could design some efficient social rules to make the society, social welfare better. So we will mainly focus on these 2 points later in the following talk. Okay. So before we talk about, we analyze the problem, let's look at 2 basic definitions first. This definitions actually talk about some basic phenomena in the decision making. The first one is avoid the crowd. So when we say avoid, before we discuss the Nash, so when we say the avoid the crowd, there are many phenomena satisfy this feature. For example, you want to avoid the traffic jam. I remember my office mate always came earlier to the office every day, and he told me he sometimes saw white ibis sometimes, where I never saw them. Probably they have finished their breakfast walk when I came. So you see, some people, they travel earlier to avoid the traffic jam. I think everyone have similar experience before. And in the current situation, I think no one is unfamiliar with this situation. We try to avoid the crowd. Okay. So this phenomenon is called avoid the crowd. The next phenomenon is the opposite, follow the crowd. So it may be the fertility decisions or attend the restaurants that may seem popular. So, for example, we often decide on what stores and restaurants to patronize or what schools to attend on the basis of how popular this seems to be. We always follow the crowd to see what's the seemingly popular school or restaurants. And also in the literature on fertility choices, it has frequently been suggested that various fertility decisions, for example, like how many children to have, whether or not to use contraception, are heavily influenced by what other people in the same area are doing. In the ice cream trolley example, here we revisit this example. In the ice cream trolley example, if every arriving customer choose to buy a priority, and if you are one of the current customers sitting at this line, you probably want to buy the priority pass too to avoid being overtaken. Or if you arrive later, but you see everyone in front of you choose to buy it, you probably will also buy it. So this example illustrates the phenomenon follow the crowd. Okay, because we just talk about 2 phenomena, 2 concepts that are very important. Any questions here? Is it clear? Okay, no question. Let me give you a question. In this example, do you think it's avoid the crowd or follow the crowd? Okay, so you see in this example, we have discussed before, if the customer in front of you have a higher incentive to leave, for example, this guy, he has a higher incentive to leave. You actually have less incentive to leave. So it's kind of like avoid the crowd. If all the other customers want to leave, you may be more, you may want to stay longer. So you may change your reneging time smaller than others. So try to avoid the crowd. This is also avoid the crowd. Also, it's not as clear as the previous example, but the behavior that is kind of like the optimal behavior that kind of like on the opposite side in this case also shows this example is avoid the crowd example. All right, now let's look at a shuttle example. I have written something here, you can read yourself, and I will express this example to you too. So for the shuttle bus example, for convenience, we present the model in terms of transportation services. Consider there are 2 types of such services. The first one is a shuttle service that departs whenever the number of waiting passengers reach the transporter's capacity. Here we assume the capacity to be 7. The second one is a bus service. Bus arrives according to a stochastic process with a non-expected residual time, which we assume to be 5 minutes. No limit assumption on the bus capacity is no limit on the bus capacity is assumed. So this example, is from Hash and Habit, 2003. This 2Q or not 2Q book, which is a very classical book we always like to use before we do the study. So it's from page 14. If you have interest, you can look at it in detail later. So now let's focus on this example. What does this example say? The example says you have 2 services. One is the shuttle service, the other is the bus service. For the bus service, it is for sure that when you arrive, your waiting time is for sure, because here we don't want to use a math to bore you. So we just say that if you wait for the bus, your expected residual waiting time, is 5 minutes. But for the shuttle bus, it's a little bit tricky. The shuttle bus depends on how many people are there. If once the number reaches 7, it will leave immediately. So if you see 6 people already queuing there, almost without any doubt, you will just take the shuttle bus and leave, because once you join the queue, 7 is reached and the shuttle bus leave immediately. But for the bus, it's guaranteed that every time is, I should not use guaranteed because it's stochastic, but the expected waiting time is 5 minutes. So immediately leave departure is always better than waiting for another, no matter how many minutes there. So the shuttle bus is tricky because it leaves depends on the number of customers that is waiting for it. Once the number reaches 7, it will leave immediately. So I give you some time to think about this example and to think whether it's follow the crowd or avoid the crowd. Anyone have any idea here? Maybe I should check the chat box. Yes, okay, I saw Guo Yifan said, yes, it's follow the crowd. Thank you. I didn't check the chat box previously. Thanks for the reply. Yes, it's follow the crowd. So let's, if we do this, we say, okay, if everyone use the shuttle service, best response. Just some stretch of thinking, because in this field, stretch of thinking is very important. So here, if everyone use it, means the proportion is 1. So here's the strategy. We denoted that by P. P is a proportion or probability to use the shuttle service. Okay, if all the people, 1 means all the people choose the shuttle service, the best response for you is also you choose it. So it's choose it or not choose it. 0 or 1, do not choose it or not choose it. If 0 people, if no one uses a shuttle bus, you will wait there forever, right? They all take the bus and you are the only one wait for there, and the shuttle never leaves. So you wait there forever. When no people use it, it's definitely for sure you won't take it. So it's 0. But also maybe there are proportion, because when each customer takes a probability to join the shuttle or the bus, then it means the proportion of the crowd, such proportion of the crowd will join the shuttle. So if I said there is a PE, maybe we call it P because we said P is a strategy. So it is a specific PE that every customer flip a coin with a probability up, facing upwards with probability PE. Once the coin shows upwards with probability PE, then you choose to join the shuttle. Otherwise, you choose to join the bus. If this is the case, then there exists. Yes, we don't know the exact number, But we know there exists such a number that makes you indifferent between joining the bus and joining the shuttle, because if some proportion of the crowd flows into the shuttle, you know the shuttle will leave. And when your expected waiting time that is equal to the expected waiting time of the bus, which is 5 minutes, then you are indifferent between joining the bus or joining the shuttle. So in this case, it's you are indifferent between join or not to join. So what happens here is your best response is when the crowd is less than PE, you prefer not join because it's too small. You know, the people is too small. You wait there, you wait for there longer. But as this proportion increases, you have a higher incentive to join the shuttle bus. And once the number reaches PE, you feel indifferent between joining the shuttle bus and the shuttle service and the bus. So here you are indifferent. This vertical line shows you are indifferent. Any point in here is your best response. And when the proportion of the crowd, that this proportion is greater than PE, it means waiting for the shuttle is better because more people will join the shuttle. So your best response is join such. That being so, the Nash equilibrium is 3 of this. Means when everyone not join, you don't join. So no one joins the shuttle here. This means no one joins the shuttle. This means everyone joins the shuttle. This means this proportion of people will join the shuttle. Okay, sorry, I'm just reading the chats. Okay, I'm not sure whether I understand your question. If after my explanation you don't understand it, can you unmute yourself and express yourself?
Oh, no, sorry, it was just a joke, no question.
Okay, yeah, we can discuss this later. All right, so here is an explanation for the shuttle example. So this example also tells us, you know, other people's strategy affect our own strategy. When no one uses it, your best strategy is not use. When someone uses it, your best strategy is also use it. And there's a proportion that you are indifferent between using or not using. Such PE is also the Nash equilibrium. Like in the equilibrium, there's always this proportion of people using the shuttle and the rest are not using it. Okay, so this is a shuttle example. Any questions in here?
Yes, I'm wondering, in this case, do we also consider if we choose the shuttle, we are facing a risk that if the capacity is full, that we couldn't get into the shuttle?
Yes, but you imagine that usually it's in your assumption of the model. If you assume everyone that arrive doing the same, so in that case, the shuttle bus also has the unlimited number of shuttle, means once this shuttle leaves, another shuttle waiting for you. Sorry, I didn't explain this clearly. So we assume there is no capacity in the bus and also in the shuttle service. There are infinitely many services waiting for that. Once this shuttle leaves, and the next one is waiting for you, but it needs to be another 7 being reached, and then we depart.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, I didn't make it clear. Thanks for making it clear, makes the example clear.
And I think there's one more question in the chat. Can
Okay.
the best response line be parabolic or non-linear?
It can be. It depends on your model, because this is a very simple example. So it seems like it's just a line with several lines. It can be any shape. I think the most parabolic like one is when to arrive question, because this question is to join or not to join. Remember we expressed in the first slide, there are several kinds of questions. So this corresponds to join or not to join. But if you look at the when to arrive question, the most of the best response is a parabolic shape. So yes, it can be any shape. It depends on your model itself.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. Now let's look at this two-server service system, and which is a more serious model. I know I said I would talk about strategic behavior in queuing systems, but because queuing system related to birth and death process, so I don't want to bore you with expressing the model itself. I just think the idea is more important. So here the examples maybe not really queuing systems, but it does represent our idea of doing such research. Okay, this example, two-server service system model. Okay, in this model, this analysis is based on, this model was proposed by Goodman and Behaviour in 2015. But we find their analysis have some flaws. So we reanalyze, use an alternative way to analyze the model again. But yeah, the model is first proposed by Goodman and Behaviour in their paper in 2015. The system consists of two servers and takes care of transmitting arriving packets. Each server can either be active or inactive. Each server has a probability of a correct packet transmission when it is active. It means even when it stays active, does not mean the packet will be successfully transmitted. Okay. Let's see that in detail, how this system works. The only server, when only one server is active, the active server takes care of the transmission, of course, like in here, what described. And when both servers are active, the packet will be served by the one with a higher successful transmission probability. For example, in this case, if when both servers are active, we send the packet to the better server. That says this. When both servers are inactive, the packet is dropped. Of course, no server takes care of the transmission. So here we assume that, so the packet is dropped either because the server is inactive, because when it's both active, we have to drop the packet. It can also be dropped due to the unsuccessful service, because if a server has a successful transmission rate P1, for example, and the server 1 is taking care of that, it has a successful transmission probability P1. In that case, it still have one probability, 1 minus P1, the packet is dropped, because that is the failure rate, we assume. Okay, so also we assume that both servers know successful transmission probability P1 and P2 before they make the decision to be active or not. So my supervisor always told me to be clear about what we know, what we don't know, the information set, which means in assumption, we need to be clear what we know, what we don't know. In here, we know P1 and P2. So P1, P2 is a successful transmission rate. We know the rate, but we don't know whether the other server chooses to be active or not active. So we don't know their behavior, but we know the parameters. Okay. In this case, the cost, before we analyze the situation, of course, we need to set the payoff, which is the profit, the money thing. It's very important, because we always act to make the profit. Or people say us, like, people use the word selfish to describe customers, but we always use rational. Payoff is most important in the game theory. Payoff setting is the most important part in the game theory, game setting. Okay, the cost of being active is C. So there is some cost to be active, which is the same for both servers. There's no difference. And we assume that an unsuccessful transmission of packet involves a reward of 0. So it's possible that you choose to open, but because your probability is very low and you didn't do this successfully, you reward 0. But once you open it, it's successfully transmitted, both of the server will receive a unit reward if as long as one server transmitted successfully. So as long as the packet is transferred successfully, both servers will receive the reward. And how the packet is transferred is based on the description in here. Okay, if just one active, the active one take care of that. If both two are active, then the one with a higher PUI will take care of it. And if they're both inactive, then no one take care of that. It just dropped. So in this case, both of them just receive 0 because they don't open the server and they receive nothing. But if they choose to open, they still don't, don't take the, they still don't transfer the packet successfully. They just lose this C, but they won't gain anything because their reward is 0. So by reading the payoff, okay, before we move into the more math part, by reading the model, you must have some feelings. The feelings is, if I'm one of the server, if my PI, because everyone know the PI, okay, I know my PI. I not only know my PI, I also know my opponent's PI, and we know if we are not that good enough, the server transmission rate is not that high, we probably don't want to open it. I mean, when I say open, I mean active. We probably don't want to be active because if we don't transmit it successfully, it's just a cost to the C. We end up with nothing. Okay, here is some thinking by reading the payoff. Now, let's do that in a more formal way, in a systematic way. Okay. So this, in the Nash equilibrium analysis, we always draw the payoff matrix. If you don't know anything about Nash equilibrium, don't worry. Just look at this. It's easy to understand. So what does it say? It says, okay, server 1, server 2, they have their actions to be active, to be inactive. And if server 1 choose active, server 2 choose active, what are their payoffs? Their payoff is, as I said before, if both of them are active, we choose the one with the highest PI. So we need to see P1, P2. We choose the maximum one of P1, P2, and let that one transfer it. And we know that with with the probability max P1, P2, we will get reward 1. Because with this probability, we will successfully transmit the puzzle. So we will get, if we successfully transmit it, we will receive a unit reward. So we will gain, this is also the expected reward we get if we both choose to be active. But yeah, if because of this, we always lose some C. And is this C? Yeah, we always, okay, I think, I'm not sure about it. Okay, let's just read it like this. If we both choose to be active, this is expected payoff. And this, we also lose some, because to be active, we need to pay C. So we also have this, this cost C. And it's both, oh, sorry, yeah, I got confused just now because I thought there should be 2C. So the first coordinate, let me restate it. The first coordinate is a payoff for server 1. So for server 1, as in this situation, both servers choose to be active. And so the expected reward for both servers, because if there is successful transmission, they both will receive a unit reward. So the expected reward is this. And since both of them choose to be active, so for both of them, they always need to minus this C because they choose to be active. As long as they choose to be active, they lose this C. And so this is a payoff when both of them choose active. Similar for others. In this case, for example, server 1 chooses to be active. So server 1 must minus this C. And server 2 is not, server 2 does not need to minus C. But if server 1 is active, server 2 is inactive, the puzzle will be transmitted with probability P1. So the expected payoff for both servers is P1. So it's expected payoff for player 1 is P1, expected for player 2 is P1. Expected payoff for player 1 is P1 minus C because he chooses to be active. But for player 2, for server 2, it does not have this minus C, it's P1. Similar for this, okay, this situation is very similar as this situation. And if they both choose inactive, nothing happened, 0, 0. Okay, this is expected payoff. And based on the expected payoff, we can see now, imagine you are one of the server. And let's see something. Okay, if the student asks questions that he or she asked, both servers are cooperating, not competing. Actually, it's I'm not sure whether how you define cooperating or competing. They are not cooperating, but they are communicating, because they are not cooperating means they care for themselves. They don't care about a little bit about what the other servers payoff. They only care about their own payoff. So I don't think they are cooperate. They only care for themselves. Okay, it's not selfish, it's rational. And whether they are competing, I'd rather not call it competing, because still they don't try to harm another person. They don't try to win, but they try to make their own better off. They just want to make themselves better, make themselves good. They don't want to harm the other person, or make the other person better or good. They don't care what the other server is, what's the payoff for the other server. They only care for themselves. So in here, I think, but they do communicate because they know each other's P1, P2. This is the common knowledge this is in the information set. They both know each other's P1 and P2. Yes, they gather rewards together. Yes, they gather reward together as long as one of them receive the package. So if you think this is like a cooperation, it may be true, but in the normal definition of cooperation, this is not cooperate, because they don't care other people's strategy, other people's payoff. They behave to make their own payoff good. That's it. They just want to optimize their own payoff. Okay, so now let's look at the problem. As I just said, each server's optimal behavior is they try to make their own. Look at here. I use this. I didn't use proper math to describe that. I use payoff one instead of I defined first, because I try to say the story instead of the notation. So anyway, this payoff is player one's payoff. So here, what I just said it's not cooperate. I mean here, look, he just takes the action that maximizes payoff one. He does not care about payoff two at all. He just maximizes his own payoff. Player one optimizes his own payoff one. Player two optimizes. Oh, sorry, there is a typo. Sorry for that. Player two optimizes his own payoff, and they choose the options based on the other player's options here. They choose options that maximize their own payoff. This is the goal in this setting. Okay. So what happens? This follows in the definition of Nash equilibrium. In the Nash equilibrium, we says no one has an incentive to deviate provides other people's strategy unchanged. So in this case, if A1, so this situation, this setting makes A1E, A2E, is E. When I say no incentive to deviate, means they already try their best. They already make they already try their best to make their payoff the optimal. So here, provided server 2 use A2E, then server 1's optimal option is A1E, the same, A2E. So this is a definition for Nash equilibrium. Okay, so if this is the case, let's look at the payoff. It's not payoff, sorry. It's a strategy plot. So as I just said, they know this P1 and P2, but in the setting, it says P1 and P2 may be not the same for each time they play the game. So they may keep changing, but no matter what value it is, they always know this P1, P2 before they play the game. But this P1, P2 may be different each time they play the game. So you need to complete in your strategy for different values on the P1 and P2. And don't worry if you can't understand this plot, immediately for the time being, because this is not immediately see. It's not an easy question. But to illustrate it better, let's just take roughly take an example to see why it works. Let's take the plot here. So the plot here is what? P1 equals, it's P1 equals to C, P2 equals to, this line is P1 minus P2 plus C equals to 0. So This means P2 equals to 2C plus epsilon. Okay, if this is the case, let's look at how the payoff matrix. Let's look at how the payoff matrix looks like in the previous slides. In the slides here. Okay. So the payoff matrix becomes like C plus epsilon, C plus epsilon, 2C plus epsilon, 2 plus epsilon, 0, 0, 0, C. This is a payoff matrix, and this is for, you know, server 2, server 2, server 1, server 1. This is active, inactive. This is active, inactive. Okay. So if you see, I just take an example in a plot to illustrate why this plot is really true. And I know you believe it's true, but just to illustrate it better, let's randomly take a point that P1 equals to C, P2 equals to 2C plus epsilon to see how it works. If this is the case, and you substitute into the payoff matrix we illustrated 2 pages earlier, the payoff matrix becomes this. Okay. If this is the case, you will see this line for server 2, this line is always better because you see C plus epsilon is always greater than C. C plus epsilon is always greater than 0. So for player 2, he always choose, this is dominated, we call dominated. Does not matter, you don't know the concept. It means he plays active is always better. Playing active is always better than playing inactive. And if this players, you know, server 1 is also aware of such situation, because in the Nash equilibrium, you not only consider yourself, you also consider your opponent, you also consider your partner. So in this case, server 1 realized that server 1 knows server 2 won't use this inactive. He will always play active. And then what he will do, and he compare these two, C plus epsilon and 2C plus epsilon, and he will choose this one. Okay. He will choose this one because 2C plus epsilon is greater than C plus epsilon. That's his payoff. So he will choose this inactive. Okay, so that's a Nash. That's a formal way of analyzing such situation. I have a question for you. Do you feel some unfairness in this game? Do you see what's going on in here? You see, it's like it happens in workplaces actually. It's like the better you are, the more work you need to do. Okay, it's unfair, right? And it's you will see it later. This unfair setting actually will cause you know, like how that's inefficient in social welfare. So just look at the time. Time flies. Okay, let's move faster. Okay, Princess dilemma. Before we move to the social welfare, remember the question I just asked. Here, the unfairness seems the better you are, you do more job, and we will see what effect this has in the social welfare. In the later session, we will introduce the concept. Before that, let's first look at the example of Princess dilemma, which is almost the first example when we learn game theory. It's so classic example that every game theory course have it as a first example. Why it is so popular? Because in Princess dilemma, of course, Princess dilemma does not apply to prisoner situation. It also applies to, it's actually a very common phenomenon. Like I always like to use the example, having nuclear weapon or not. The society does not want any country to have a nuclear weapon. It's horrible. But provided that all the other countries have the nuclear weapon, you must have it yourself too, right? You must be prepared. So this situation, the Princess dilemma, express the Bragg paradox. What does Bragg paradox mean? It means the more option you have, when you have the addition of new options may lead to a new equilibrium in which everyone is worse off. If you look at this, okay, I will skip the details. The Nash equilibrium is this one. But you may feel this one looks much better, right? 3, 3 is better than 1, 1 in every coordinate. But what can we do? It's a Nash equilibrium. Because the Nash equilibrium is we compare, you know, the coordinate, we see the strategies, and no one has incentive to deviate, provides others stay unchanged. So this princess dilemma is classic or popular because it describes a phenomenon that the Nash equilibrium is not sometimes does not coincide with the social optimal design. Like the society wants this one to be, because this one is better in terms of the summation of both players. But this one is not. However, this one is a Nash equilibrium. If you let the players play the game, they will reach at this point. The question is how to dragging this one to here. 1, 1, 2, 3, 3. Luckily, we can design the social rules. We can't control people's behavior, but we can control the social rules. So, okay, because the time is limited, I just escaped this part. This part is the designed social welfare, the optimal social welfare is we want the servers behave like that. Okay, we want, as long as only one server is active and both servers are inactive if they are not good enough. And this is a socially optimal, socially designed behavior. Each server behaves, each server acts. But in reality, they don't act this way. We know how they react. They react in this way. Apparently, they are different. And if we plot it, we will find that the best social welfare in here is better than the best social welfare under the Nash equilibrium. Means the means the servers don't do what you expect them to do. We know that social welfare won't appear from a void. So how can we regulate it? Anyone have any idea here? How can we make people behave the socially optimal behavior?
By subsidize?
Yes, so it's because we talk about the unfairness. If we now see the unfairness create a gap between the optimal social welfare. So, and we know we can't just give money to one of the servers because the profit won't be created from void. So what we can do is we can ask the inactive server to pay some price or pay some money to the active server. And after this game is fairer, and we show that the details are shown in our paper. I will show you the literature later. So after by regulating the queue, when I say regulate, I mean ask the inactive server, pay the active server some money. After this inner transfer, and this game becomes fairer, and we see the social welfare under this setting coincides with the social welfare from the society's, coincide with the optimal social welfare, which is the best option from the social planner's point of view. So this example here just to show you that we can regulate the queue by design social rules. This is called mechanism design, but this is just a very small branch of mechanism, means laying the admission fee. By laying some admission fee or laying some inner transferring fee, we can make the game better. We can increase the social welfare by designing a better social rule or game rule. Okay, so I think my time is up. That's it. I actually want to share with you a very interesting example. You can read it. I use an extra 2 minutes to express this example because I really think, I myself, gain a new perspective about this information set after I learned this example when I was just joined as a PhD student. So this example shows how important the information you have. Like what I said earlier, when we deal with game theory, like when we do such research, we must be clear what we know and what we don't know, which means we must be clear about our information set. So this example says there are 4 prisoners. So all these 4 prisoners will be freed if at least one of them correctly guesses the color of the hat of his head. They can't speak to each other, they can't touch each other, there are no mirrors. And they all know there are 2 black hats and 2 white hats. And these are the 4 people. Okay, this is the situation. Like number 1 is number 2 and number 3's hat. Number 2 says number 3 is hats. Number 3 says only the wall. Number 4 says only the wall. So it seems this one is just useless. Okay, when I see this example, I just ignore this one. And anyway, so this is the setting. Just take some time to guess. Yeah, how you like in this setting. My question is, do you think these 4 prisoners will be freed at last? Based on the information you have. Okay, you can take time to think of that, and you can also, because my time is 50 minutes, and you can also start asking questions related with that. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. So the token. By the way, the token. Let me say the final words first. Thank you. My research is supported by University of Melbourne and ASIMS. I also want to thank Jiesen to give me this opportunity to sit here and share the opinions with you. I really appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, and enjoy the talk also. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Thank you for your amazing talk. I suggest everyone to unmute yourself and give Jiesen a round of applause.
Oh yeah, let me start reading. Thank you. Thank you.
And we still got a few minutes for questions.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? I saw there's one previous questions in the chat, so I will read it out.
Yeah.
Have you looked at applying prisoners' dilemma for climate change policy decisions?
Oh, to climate change policy decision. I never look at that, but I think if you need to first you need to describe the decisions clearly, because even if the same same type of decision, if you assume different stuff, it may falls at different categories of decision making problems. I myself didn't look at it in this way, but if you want to look at it in this way, we can have a further discussion on that.
Thanks.
What might happen if there is
Stop recording.
between the servers when both are active?